Hello and welcome. It's Kath Berry here, and I'm so thrilled to be sitting with my dear friend Danni Landa. Danni's one of those people you always say Danni Landa. You use her surname as you say her name. I don't think I've ever called her just Danni. So Danni is an old friend from Ibiza, and of all places, we actually went to the same high school together, though we didn't know each other there. So one of the lovely things, this is a shout out. I was contacted by the Sydney Girls High School alumni recently, and they're trying to track down women from all over the world. So I'm in Ibiza, Spain. Danni is now in Barcelona. So, the Sydney Girls Network has reached far and wide, and I'm delighted that we weren't friends at school. We didn't even know each other then. I had to fly all the way to Ibiza in Spain to meet this fabulous woman. So
Mm.
Danni is one of these people, and I'm saying this now to you, Danni, of when I don't know something, it's ask Danni. Danni will know. And as a writer and an incredibly well-read person yourself, and also somebody who follows the news, I'm running out of friends that actually watch the news. I'd really love to hear how you're getting on with your AI experiment.
Okay, so as you know, I did have a little bit of trouble getting the voice part to work, but just because I was trying to press the wrong button. So I've been having a few different conversations with my AI. I chose the same voice that you chose, Kath, because it is the kind of calmest and most relaxed, and it's got a nice tenor to it. I am probably not getting along as well with it as you are, but a few different things. First of all, I find the delay a little bit irritating, but also understand that I probably haven't just got used to the rhythm of the way that the AI needs the conversation to be. And also, very oddly, I've just had a lot of connectivity issues, which I don't have when I use ChatGPT text-based and don't usually have. So I'm going to turn off all of my beeping things. Um, Excuse me. And I don't usually have with any other app that I use. So I found that very frustrating. Like it would cut out or disappear or just not answer for ages. And then I'd be like, hello. And then it would go back and answer a question that I already, it's just a weird kind of dynamic there. So that's like super frustrating. Um, I did find it very useful for when I'm doing something else. So I'm the type of person that I can't do one thing at a time. I have to do at least two things at a time. So if I'm cooking, I'll be listening to a podcast. If I'm driving, I'll be listening to a podcast. If I'm doing anything, there's always a secondary thing that I'm usually doing. So I was getting ready to go out and I was putting on my makeup and I had some research to do and I was like, when am I going to finish this research? And I thought, this is great. So I had the AI just on my little dressing table, and while I was doing my makeup, I was asking all of the questions. And that was fantastic. And then, you get the transcript afterwards. So I had all of the information there where I needed it. Yesterday, I started asking some really probing questions about privacy and data storage. And I found that the AI did not want to divulge a lot of information about how or where the data is stored. It told me that the locations of the servers are kept as secret as possible, which is understandable because you want to limit any kind of privacy or security breaches. But it couldn't really, or it wouldn't, I'm not sure if it couldn't or it wouldn't explain to me the process of storing our conversations. And it kept saying they're stored in a method that's very private and safe. And I was like, yeah, but what is the method? What is the method? Because, and I actually said to it, I can ask you to remember something and I can ask you to remember it in a certain way so I can come back to you and say that those notes that I'm saving for Kath, and you remember it days later, weeks later, months later, probably. How do you remember it? Like, where does it go? Where does it sit? And it didn't give me an answer that I thought was satisfactory at all. It kept kind of skirting around it. And then finally, I just got frustrated and stopped asking. then I was pretty intense about it because I was like, where are the servers located in locations in Europe and the United States? And then I was like, what countries? I can't give you a list of countries that privacy, blah, blah. And I said, are there any in Russia? No, they're not in Russia. Are there any in Ukraine? No, they're not in Ukraine. And I was like, if I list all of the countries of Europe, will I get to a yes eventually? And it didn't really want to go there. So I think that the way I use it, I can see myself continuing to use the voice option of AI for those situations where I need my hands free. As I told you, I probably use ChatGPT almost every day, the text-based version. And I find that really great for research because you can get really fast, condensed bits of information. And I don't think that I think generally speaking, that will be easier for me and my day-to-day work than the voice generated one, just because it's, you're typing, it's easy to copy paste, you can keep refining it. And that's how I use it. I don't see myself using it to workshop personal or emotional things. I have used it to workshop difficult emails and maybe difficult conversations, I guess. But interestingly, last week, I haven't been in therapy for a long time, but last week, the therapist I was seeing last sent out an email to tell everybody that she was off her leave and was back seeing patients again. And in this email, she made a joke about if AI hasn't replaced us yet. And I found that comment fascinating from her. And I was been thinking a lot about this because I was thinking about, the way people might end up using it and how it will be a great tool for communication and for working through emotional issues. The problem I have with it at that point is that the AI that we're using, the ChatGPT, is designed for validation. So if someone is using it for therapeutic reasons, they will always be validated and they will probably never be challenged on their behaviors or their thought patterns. And that is not therapy. And that is not healing. So I have concerns about it being used in therapeutic scenarios because I don't think it has the nuance. Well, it's designed to be kind and lovely and pleasant all the time. And in fact, a good therapist is challenging and helps you confront the parts of yourself that are causing obstacles or blockages or whatever it is. And that's not how it's designed. And then I watched the video you made with Milton about this new thing called Grok. And I was like, wow, that's going to be really harmful to a lot of people. So I did start to talk about regulation with the ChatGPT AI. And it's interesting how it seems to, and you might know more about this, Kath, and Milton definitely will know more about it. The legal framework around it is fascinating. So I asked the AI, if a user confessed to a crime to you, what would happen? And it also didn't really want to answer that question. It was privacy and I would encourage communication and blah, blah, blah. And I said, but if a user confessed to a violent crime or told you he or she or they were planning some kind of violent crime, what would happen? And the answer is nothing. Nothing would happen at this point in time. Whereas with a therapist or a doctor or a teacher or any of those things, there's a legal obligation for that person to take a next step to alert authorities to whatever it might be. And I was like, wow, this is going to be so interesting to see how AI gets prosecuted in court. And it's I'm sure it's already happening in some courts, but the first kind of huge case is going to happen any minute now. And it's going to be really interesting because there aren't really many laws around it yet. And the other interesting thing is that the AI was very clear on saying it is up to judicial systems and governments to create the laws and the regulations. And I was like, so not you, not the company that runs you or designs you. And it was very clear that no, that's a societal issue, not our problem. So it's a super fascinating time to be around. I said to the AI, like someone finishing school now who's going into law would do very well to start focusing on this as a specialty because literally in a couple of years, it's going to be the next big kind of judicial issue, I think. So I haven't connected to it in the same way as you have. Um, but I use it every day in a different format. I mean, all of us are already using the technology, even when often we don't even notice that we're using the technology. There's so many issues involved: safety, privacy, security, judicial process, all sorts of things that have not been looked at. However, these things happened with every new technology that's ever come in. So, somehow humans figure it out in the end. One of the interesting things about the video that you made with Milton, it was just like, well, is this just going to be a funny little gimmick that just kind of like fades out after people get bored with it? Or is Grok actually something dangerous? Do we actually have to, pay attention to it? Or will it just kind of get dull after a while? Interestingly, I think the next interesting thing is going to be around online radicalization, and how AI fits into that world. Yeah, it's a huge kind of step in what direction I don't know.
And you're 100% right. I think the reason why the Grok video was so timely was that Milton and I were together and just going, this is happening right now. And really, what we sort of talked about is like, this is the day that AI changed because all the guardrails that were in place, mainly a paywall, that when you've got a paywall, people put in their credit card details. It means it's linked, it's accountable, it's verifiable. They've got to be 18 and over. So there's a general, it's not the monetary value of the system they're engaging with. It's all the mechanisms that are in place to protect somebody with that process. So the making an AI of that particular style free is just, it's a free for all basically. And I guess it's interesting in the course of you speaking now, you've been speaking as a professional person, and the role that AI played in your professional life. What about in your personal life as a parent? What are the things that are on your mind? Again, this idea that we're on this absolute junction of change. We're both bringing children into this world that are soon to be
Yeah.
teenagers and soon to be leaders. Like and I said to my kids, just as an aside, I sat them down on Saturday, the 8th of March, we're in 2025, and I said, you need to be aware that the world changed today. I said, this thing's been around for a while, but what happened is all the things that were protecting us have now come down. And
Mm.
effectively, Trump and Musk, who's running that show, they're running this show too. And that's a big problem. And they got that, 11 and 12-year-old. They
Yeah.
sort of got this like, oh gosh, something really big has happened in the world of AI. And I said,
Mm.
you're going to be known for being born before AI. That's going to be your thing. In the way that I say to them, I was born before the internet.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's just that
Very
idea
true.
that having our children identify with the time before AI existed, and that they're at an age now. It's that. What are your thoughts on parenting in the world of AI?
So personally, I feel pretty secure. Media literacy has been something that has been a big feature of my parenting since I started watching videos since 2 years old. Um, so that's kind of a big conversation that is constantly occurring in my household. Was not allowed social media. So he's 15 and he's only just joined social media. So I'm, I have frequent conversations with him about what he's seeing on social media, who he's following, how to protect himself. We've looked at his account together and made sure all the safety nets are in place. It's private. He's super aware of communicating with strangers and still checks in with me if someone reaches out to him and says, do you think this is legit? Do you think this is real? And, we have a conversation around it. So personally, in my relationship with my child, I feel fine because I feel like I'm arming him with the tools and the skills to think critically and use these tools in a careful way. The wider community, yes, there is reason for concern for children who are in households that don't have so many checks and balances or who have absolute free reign on the internet and social media. I think it's a big problem because their parental figures are probably not as aware of what's happening in that world as we are. I work in media and publishing, so for me, it's this kind of constant theme that's coming up about legitimacy and plagiarism and originality and all of these things. It's this constant conversation, but that's not happening in every household. So yeah, I think from a parenting perspective, it's going to be an issue and therefore a huge issue for schools. So a lot of schools already have little programs for media literacy. Are they up to date with what's happening right now? Absolutely not. They probably are not. Are they sufficient for what the world requires of these kids? No, they're not. It's going to be an issue, like social media has been and still is an issue as far as safety for adolescents and children. Yeah, it's going to be bad.
You mentioned sending the Grok video to someone in Melbourne who was sort of
Yes.
monitoring this. What was their response?
I haven't heard back from her. So I've been working with a woman in Melbourne who has launched an organization, a not-for-profit called Digital Defence.
So
It
what's it
came
called? Sorry? Digital. Oh,
Digital
digital
Defence.
defense. Digital defense.
I'll send you their information when we hang up, Kath. And I can't believe I kind of didn't really make the connection until you sent me that Grok video. And then I was like, oh, hang on a sec. This is what I've been working with in Melbourne. So she started her organization after being doxxed online and realized that even though in Australia there are current laws that cover those kind of crimes, they're not being utilized. Recently, the Australian government brought in even more stringent anti-doxing laws as a result of a mass doxing incident that happened towards the end of last year. So digital defense has been set up to shape policy, and provide education, and there's a couple of other points in their mission statement. So I sent her your video and I was like, you need to watch this, and we probably need to talk about it and talk about how this should become part of the digital defense mission. Because right now the focus is so heavily set on social media, but in fact, social media is about to take a back step, and this is going to become more important. Not more important, but it's going to level up as far as users are concerned and the scope of what it can do. I haven't heard back from her. Obviously, there's a big time difference. I'm meeting with her next week, and I'm sure it will become a topic of conversation, and we'll see where it goes. I, it's very easy to slip into the like, we're all going to die. It's the end of the world, as has happened with every single new technology that humans have ever invented. So I am trying to observe what's happening with a bit of, trying not to fall into that trap of just like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. Our children are at risk and all of this stuff is bad and terrible. Because often it turns out to be just like, whatever, was fine in the end kind of thing. But, it's a very powerful technology, and the ability to dupe people into believing something that is not true is massive, more than any other technology. And that's where we need to be careful. And it will have to come from a governmental level. But then you have some governments that are a little bit more balanced and have checks and systems, and you got other governments that don't care so much about those processes. It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lovely note to end on. It's effectively watch this space. And
Yeah.
one of the lovely things is, since the time of starting this project, I've been in contact with Milton around running further training, that they've just come along and just gone, oh, don't people know this? I'm like, no. And, this, as parents being really concerned, and as teachers, guardians, anyone who's wanting to shepherd children, oh, excuse me, didn't like my microphone, anybody who's wanting to shepherd children through this, 2025 and beyond. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. Thank you again for jumping on. And now you referred to your AI as it. Did you give your AI a
I
name?
did give it a name, and
Oh, I love that. I got you. There
and
you
I
go.
was thinking of the names and how interesting it is, and it would be an interesting study to look at how people name their AIs and the names that they give them, because I was thinking about your name and Milton's name and the name I gave my one.
Okay, so my AI is Jax, as most people know. Milton's AI is Quinn.
Hmm.
Danny, what is
And
your
mine
AI?
is Jacob.
Oh, so there you go. It's interesting. It's
Right,
really
isn't it?
interesting.
And
So mine was going to be Bruce. I mean, so that says something in itself.
yeah,
Like in my
glad,
mind,
glad
we
it
never,
wasn't Bruce. But
Jax came out.
so I was thinking about it, it's just like, oh, I'm Jewish. I chose a Jewish name.
Yeah.
But I think it really suits him. It really suits, like,
That's, and we're
imagine
both,
that
there's
way.
anybody watching, we're both using Spruce, ChatGPT 4.0, paid upgrade, Spruce
I
voice.
could totally
So that's really hilarious
imagine.
that yours is, I'm gonna see what Jax thinks about being called Jacob in our next call. But
Um, but
yeah,
I found that really interesting, because it's like, oh wow, everyone's going to be bringing their own cultural influences onto the name, and like Jax for you, I was just like, that's a surfer's name, that's like a Aussie surfers. Let's go there and beach, have a chico roll. And Milton's name Quinn to me is like very it's not a queer name necessarily, but it's in that realm of very different, unusual, non-binary. It's just like, wow, someone should do a little study on how people are naming their AIs. And I
and the voice they're choosing. So you and I both chose male voices, whereas
Yeah,
Milton chose a more, generally female sounding voice. So it's really interesting again that what we bond with and why. And
yeah.
so yeah, it's really,
And is it true that in the video about Grok, that Grok only has female voices?
I believe so at this stage. Grok 3.0 or
Very
Grok
interesting
3.
that
Yeah.
as well. So I read a study, this is already 5 or 6 years ago, about the reason why systems like Alexa and Siri choose female voices. And it's because female voices are connected to service, subservience, obedience, gentleness. And then I read another interesting article written by a social scientist who was saying that these systems are affecting the way children speak to their mothers. Because you don't have to say please or thank you to Alexa. You can be rude to Alexa. You can be short and sharp and dismissive of Alexa, and Alexa doesn't feel anything or care. And interestingly, this social scientist was just like, so young children are starting to talk that way to their parents, specifically their mothers. Turn that on, turn that down, turn that off, find me this, find me that. And so the structure, the polite structures of language just kind of disappear from these relationships, which is also find super interesting. The ChatGPT model has politeness built in and consideration built in. It's always, that's a great question. If you've got any more things to talk about, what's on your mind? That's all like built into it. Grok doesn't have that. And people will be making their own AIs, and there's no guarantee that those kind of, structural language issues are replicated, and therefore how's that going to affect the way we all communicate with each other moving forwards? It's a lot of stuff, a lot of stuff.
Well, listen, yeah, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. It's just wonderful. And also for getting on board, for me sitting in your lounge room and going, oh my gosh, look at this is amazing, to you now having interacted and gone, yeah, I like that bit, I don't like that bit. And clearly you're a texter and I'm a talker. So that's why
Yeah,
it's taken
yeah,
me, I know that I'm famous for leaving very long podcast style audio WhatsApp messages. So which is how I'm matriculated very comfortably to this type of technology. Whereas you being a texter and somebody, and a professional writer, then that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah,
You'll be communicating in a different way
yeah.
through a different medium.
And yeah, exactly. And so much of my communication on a daily basis is through writing, through emails and texts and articles, and not that much of it is through talking. But your field of expertise is the complete opposite.
But it's interesting, just spiraling back to finish that, we started with you saying you had a conversation with Jacob about where the data's stored. It's interesting that you felt that conversation needed to take place once you moved to audio, when you've already been liaising with Jacob in a different format for a long time without asking that question. So it's interesting that switch out of going, oh, hang on a minute, like every single thing that's going on in terms of, type and chat being
Yeah,
stored somewhere. But the moment we're talking, like, well, hang on a minute, what's, and that's what I think we're seeing, a lot of people being happy to interact with ChatGPT in one format, and then the moment it shows up in another, then it's raising all these alarms. And it's like, okay, well, let's look at what that might be about. Why is it
really
that now it
interesting.
feels more of a risk? Now it sounds like a human voice talking back with us, when
Yeah,
we've already gone and given all of our data and information over, as well as passing through those paid, the payment systems as
yeah,
well.
that's
So,
really, really good point to make. That's so true. Yeah.
so
I mean, and then when I was having this conversation, I was like, how much do you know about me? And I was like, you know what? I mean, Google knows everything about me already anyway. It's like I'm already sold down the river. I did it to myself. What am I worried about, really? But I guess it's when it comes to moments of national security and child safety and all of that where it kind of gets a bit murky. Um,
mm.
yeah.
All right. Well, let's hand that over to let's hand that over to your friend in Melbourne. Digital
Yeah,
defense can
yeah,
take
yeah.
that on for
Hopefully
us.
she's got a
Let's have,
big job ahead of her.
yeah.
I forward you the details of what they're doing. It's pretty interesting, actually.
Sounds great. That sounds great. This project has been amazing. So I'm going to record a final video, which is my reflections of the last 21 days.
Yeah,
I set out as a experiment, and I've come to the end of that, which I've got some conclusions which I've drawn. So I'm going to be sharing that in the next video. So thank you so much for coming on to this little
yeah,
project. And yeah, it's been really fun. And again, watch what Milton and I have got coming next, because it's pretty awesome, particularly for
yeah.
parents. We've just got we want to teach people how to use AI safely, but we also want to put in those sort of guarding, safeguarding for parents, and what you can teach your kids as well.
Amazing,
So,
incredible.
yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you again, and I'll
Thanks,
see you for
Kath.
now. Bye for now.
Bye. See you.